Hi, and thanks for joining our video on generic inquiries. So in this video, we're going to talk about generic inquiries. It's one of the most powerful features in Acumatica because it allows you to pull any amount of data out of the system and display it the way you want to. So this is powerful because a lot of systems are very restrictive. They don't allow you to get into other areas of the software. Either there's a report or a screen for it, and then that's it. Another way to describe generic inquiries is almost like a query that you can build. If you're familiar with things like SQL, you can go into a database and write any query that you want and see the data. So let's start off by getting to the screen. So generic inquiry. And what we'll do is we'll create this sales history one. Okay, so we're putting in sales history. Now over here, what we can do is we can select our workspace. So this allows us to put it in the workspace that we want it. And then the category, for example, so inquiry. Now, the sitemap title and the sitemap location, you definitely need a sitemap title. The sitemap location, this is for, before Acumatica changed its user interface, it used to be more of a sitemap structure in this tree view. So if I go down here to distribution, under sales orders, under maybe reports and actually work area, enter, and we could put it right there, for example, our sales history. But the workspace and category is more part of the modern UI. Okay, so we'll save that. And what we'll do down here is we'll pick our tables. You can see I've already picked a couple of tables. So we want our sales order table and our SO line. So for a sales history, what we want to do is display all of the lines of information on all the sales orders across the system. And the reason we have the sales order table is for basically the date that the item was sold. You'll also get the customer information in the SO order table. So you'll get some broad summary fields of the order. But the SO line will actually give me all the individual items, the quantities, the price they were sold at, and that kind of thing. So we'll get more information in the SO line table, which is basically how this is going to be built. Okay. So first we'll go into our relations. Now our relations allow us to join our tables together. We need to do this because if I look into the SO line table, how does it know what order it's looking for? If I'm trying to find, for example, 5 of quantity XYZ was sold to customer Acme, how would I know that information is in the SO order table? So there has to be a link between them. So that's what the relations does. We call it joins in SQL vernacular. And what we'll do is we'll add we have 2 tables here that we added over here. So SO order to SO line. And you have a couple of different options here, the join type. So this you should look up online for the full definition, but we want to join to the right side, meaning to the SO line. So for every SO line, we want a record in the system. So the way we're going to tie these together, how do we join? On what field do we join these 2 tables? So there's a couple of different things we do in an order and a line. So the first thing we do is the order type. And we do this for optimization. So we'll add order type. Order type fields are present in both the parent and the child table. The other thing we're going to do, which is more obvious, is the reference number. So the order number needs to line up with the order number in the line table. Okay, these are all going to tie together. Okay. Now after we're done with that, we're going to skip over these for now. We can add these in a moment. But we're going to add and get our results together. So the first thing we want out of this is we want our order number. So out of the order table, we'll find our order number. Okay. And the next thing we want, maybe out of the order, again, the order is the header. of this is maybe the customer ID's description. Now, one of the things you see here is a little yellow mark here, a warning, saying that adding this field might cause a problem with performance, because what we're doing is Acumatica is showing us this field. It's coming from a different table, the customer table, and as a result of that, it could make things perform a little bit slowly because we don't have our customer table joined here. But for this purpose, the performance should be fine because our demo site is pretty small. What we could do here is we'll add the order type, because that'll be nice to see. So we'll put the order type in here, and we can do some cool things later. Now let's get into our line information. So the first thing we want is the inventory ID. Again, description. I prefer the description. It'll make more sense to see it. And we want the quantity. So we want the order quantity in this case. And then we want the unit price. And the extended price. So there's a couple other fields of consequence. The first is the width. So we could define the default width for this. In some cases, based on the data field type, the width might be a little too big, for example, and you may want to cut it down so you can fit more on the screen. Style, if you see one of my other videos regarding conditional formatting, this allows us to change the color of this particular field based on a value. So you can find our other video on conditional formatting, but basically you use a condition here where if expression is true, then use one of these styles, for example, colors. If expression is false, then maybe you use the default. So that's what that's all about. Visible, you can turn it off and on if you need to. What would be the purpose of adding the field and then making it not visible? Well, sometimes you may turn certain fields off later because maybe you don't want employees in the company to see those fields, but rather than remove it and lose the work that you've done, you could just check this. Default navigation allows you to actually navigate to this field, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then caption. These captions aren't exactly pretty, so we can put in a nice caption such as order number. Maybe number like that. All right, now the other thing we might add here too is the order's total. So right now we're basically putting all the line prices in there, but the total here might be helpful. So we'll go down here to order total and we'll add that. Now you're going to see that happen. If there's 5 line items in an order, then you're going to see this price show up a couple of times, right? Unless we turn on grouping, which is over here. So let's take a look at what we have so far. So we'll view this inquiry. And what you can see here is, again, the order numbers are duplicating because there's multiple lines in this order. But we knew that. We wanted that. We wanted to see the sales history of all the inventory items. That was the purpose of this. But if we open up this order, and as you can see, there's a hyperlink that actually links directly to the order. We can see, for example, for order 1253, you got your hot dog buns, you got your coffee K-Cup, Lipton's, and so on. So all of these items are showing up correctly. Okay. Now, the other thing that's got a hyperlink is the type for the order type. That's not really that helpful. It just brings up the order type preferences. But if we go back now and we go into our generic inquiry, there's a couple other things we can do with this. The first is, if we go to our results grid, I could, if I wanted to, add the customer in here. So we'll go into customer ID. Sorry, I lost it. Customer ID. And save it. Review it again. You notice there's a hyperlink to this, and it's actually letting us drill into this. So if I wanted to look at the customer, now I have a pop-up for the customer. Now you can do other things. The customer's name is right here. If I wanted to, maybe I don't want this field. Maybe I want to click on the actual customer's name. So for that, I can come in here and I could say navigate to, but I don't have anything set up for navigation. So let's go over here. We'll open up a screen. We'll go through the sitemap under receivables, work area, manage customers. And our parameter for this is automatically filled in. It knows, it's smart enough to know. And so this is the field coming from the customer area, but what we want is the customer ID, which is coming from the sales order. Okay. Now if we go back to our results grid and we look at our customer ID description, we can select this and actually navigate to it. So let's take a look at how that works. Now if I click on this, I got the same result as before. Okay, notice the back button brought us back to our customers, however. So that's something you need to keep that in mind. So let's go back to our generic inquiry. And again, now we have this navigate to. Now, there's a couple of options here as well for the navigation. So if we go into our screens, we're navigating to that customer, but notice it used the same tab, which kind of we lost our place. We ended up going into the customer profile, couldn't get back to our generic inquiry. So what you can do is you can choose a couple of options here. You can say same tab, new tab. You can even do side panels here. So what we could do, let's just look at new tab. Take a look at that. So if I click this, and Acumatica opens up another tab, I still have my sales history here. So that's kind of nice. So then I'll go back into my generic inquiry. Let's try a different one. So under navigation, let's try a pop-up window. Is pretty obvious what that does. Side panel though, let's see what that looks like. So now notice on the right-hand side, you have these side panels. Okay. Now, if you'll notice, it actually opens up the customer profile. So this allows us to see our order and our customer profile on the right-hand side. So if I go back down to a different customer, you notice it's changing as we go. So the side panel is really helpful for doing that. It gives you another view. So let's go back into our generic inquiry. Let's just take a look at that. And you can also even pick an icon for it. So we could pick some sort of customer icon here. We can add more screens for the order, and our side panel will automatically navigate to the appropriate record as we change the record in our main generic inquiry. So that's really nice as well. Entry point. So prior to Acumatica having screens, it used to be if I was looking for customers, so let's say I come over here and I click on customers, Acumatica would bring up the profile screen of the customer, and it basically bring up a new record. So it looked like this, blank customer, and you can get to work on it. And then if you wanted to do a lookup for other customers, you'd click the magnifying glass and so on. The entry point screen allows you to replace that. So over time, Acumatica built these in. So the reason that when we go to receivables and we click on customers is because the generic inquiry for customers is defined as an entry point. So that's what that's all about. So you can actually replace a screen. Let's say you build your own screen form. You can create a generic inquiry. We can give you the listings of all the records of your form. And then you can use it so that when you go into it and double click on it, it'll go into that profile screen. So this is really helpful. So the other thing we can do here is operations with records. This allows us to perform actions against multiple records. So if we take a look at, for example, customers, just jumping back for a second, these are all disabled because we don't have a main entry screen defined. The main entry screen tells us what our rules and regulations are for performing these updates. Without it, this is grayed out. So if we take a look at customers, and we edit our generic inquiry. We go to entry point. You'll notice there's a couple of things here. Now, mass actions on records are not really practical because, you know, some of the actions that you'll be able to do, if we take a look at this inquiry and we open up a customer, you know, your actions are these kinds of things. So none of these are really good examples to perform against multiple customers. However, if we go back, if we look at some of the other options, turn this off, you know, we have the ability to delete multiple records. That may be practical. We could do mass record update. Okay. Notice enable record creation. This allows us to create a new customer in this particular generic inquiry. So over here under sales history, this is not practical because I don't have a screen here to create. I'm not going to create a line item without a sales order attached and everything. I don't have the business logic here to do that. But over here under customer list, where entry screen customer is selected, it makes perfect sense. Now, the other thing you could do is you can actually default what your fields are. So you can have multiple generic inquiries for different purposes and say, all right, well, you know, this is for a specific customer in specific status, or with a specific note, or with some specific settings. So you can have new record defaults. As far as the mass record update, over here this tab is opened up and we can turn on the tabs that we want to be able to change. So, you know, some of the changes we might make, maybe we would change the credit past due or the credit limit. Or we can change the credit verification, which is the type. Are we doing days past due, credit limit, or both? So anyway, we save these and we'll view the inquiry. And now you notice with this checkbox here, this column, I can select a bunch, select update, and it gives me those very same fields. So I can come in here and make changes to the values. Notice this field is credit verification. As I mentioned, this gives you the selection. Maybe I want to disable the credit limit for all of these. I could select it, hit finish, and now I've updated the ones I could. Now these, it's telling me no, probably because the record's disabled. So you go in here and we take a look, and currently we can't make a change to it because it's disabled. That's why you're going to get those messages based on the business logic. But this is really handy. So if we go back into our sales history generic inquiry, some of the other things that we skipped over, sort order. So this allows you to change the sort order, keeping in mind that your generic inquiry will allow you to, the end user, to sort by clicking on any column. So I can show, for example, the total quantity. I want to see the highest quantity sold. I want to see the items with the highest unit price, or I can do filters and stuff. So you can do all those things if you want to from an end user standpoint, but you can do them right from here, right from the default. This will allow you to present the generic inquiry the way you intended it to when you built it. So you'd come in here and you'd add the field that you want and select ascending and descending. The other thing you can do is you can build your conditions in here. So I can say, for example, only show me order quantity on the SO line that's greater than 0. Meaning I don't want to see anything in 0. Maybe for whatever reason this report's returning 0 lines. I don't want to see them. Now with this you can also combine. So if I wanted to, see the operator here all the way to the right is and. It has to be greater than 0 and maybe the amount, the unit price, has to be greater than or equal to $5. So this is how I can combine things. But then I can also turn and put some OR conditions in here. Now for OR conditions, it's a good idea to put them in parentheses. It's the brackets right here. So you could start to build parentheses out and compound conditions. So we'll delete these. So parameters. This allows the end user to add their own filter parameters at the top of the screen. So we can come in here and we can put in a parameter, let's say, of inventory ID. All right. So we'll look for our schema field here. And the display name can include spaces and stuff. Okay. And we'll say from the schema. This allows us to do a lookup. So we'll save this, and now we'll view our inquiry. So now what you see is an inventory ID here. I can do a lookup, and it's showing me all of my inventory items. Now, this is not going to work yet. Why? Because I didn't put a condition. So we added our parameter, but we didn't put a condition to it. So what we can do here is we can say one or the other. We can say the data field inventory ID for SO line equals inventory ID, which is our parameter. This was pulled from here, the name that we gave it. So let's save it. And now you could see AA machine was the inventory ID, and if we change it, now you get filters based on the items that you want. Now, currently, if I delete this, it's blank because our condition says, show me lines where this is equal to it. So the other thing, the trick is if you want to leave this blank by default and be able to show everything if the user doesn't select anything. So in here, we also need to add an OR condition here, where our parameter, the new parameter that we added, is null. So this means it's okay, even if it's null, to show the records. So we'll close this off. And now you'll see everything, unless you put something in here. Then you'll see a filter. But if I delete this, now it shows everything. Okay, so this gives you a general idea of how to create generic inquiries, how to add some tables, to join them, to put a parameter in there and establish a condition for it. You can define a sort order. Here's all our different columns with nice column names. We can navigate to different screens. We talked about entry point and what this page does. And we talked about our navigation screen, which allows us to do side panels. Now, just taking a look at this, now this beautiful generic inquiry that we've created with a side panel showing customers. As I mentioned, the end user can sort and do all sorts of things. They can create their own filters. So they can create their own end user filters where they say, maybe show me where the customer equals to ABC bartending. And they can save it and click OK. So now they have their own little tabs here that they can work off of. You can create your pivot tables from here. So I can say, show me sales by order type by item. Right? And I could share it with other people. So we'll make our inventory item the row. Our type will be the column. And the value will be our extended price, which takes the quantity and the unit price. We'll turn this off. And now we can see our total sales by item, by order type. So this is what you've created. With this generic inquiry, just a little bit of work, we now can do so much. And this allows people to drill down. So I can see, well, the Acer laptop has got 3.9 million in sales. I can click on this, it'll do a quick drill down and show me those records of the Acer laptop. So a lot of possibilities come out of the generic inquiry, which is why it is one of the most powerful features in Acumatica. So thanks so much for watching. At the end of the video, please reach out with any questions that you have. You'll see our contact slide. Thanks so much.